Think twice before driving through a closed roadway. I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Pennsylvania State Representative Todd Stevens. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
This is actually a piece of legislation you're calling Turn Around, Don't Drown, and it's legislation that you're working to move forward, but talk to us a little bit about the catalyst behind it.
I routinely meet with the first responders and township managers in my particular legislative district. And the township manager in Upper Dublin, Paul Leonard, is also a first responder, and he brought this idea. Upper Dublin, unfortunately, like many of our communities, is subject to massive flooding problems. And in recent flood events, they've had several cars drive around barricades that closed roadways. And that endangers both the occupant of the vehicle as well as the first responders. Many people don't realize, but just 6 inches of water will float your car. And as a result, our first responders need to then go into harm's way to rescue these folks who, through their own lack of understanding, I guess, drive around these barriers. So the idea really is to create awareness that if you see a road closed sign, that means the road is closed, it's not safe to travel. So turn around, don't drown.
So if the idea is to create awareness, why are you making this a summary offense through this legislation, actually putting fines in place for going through a closed roadway? Well,
I think that's the type of emphasis that I believe this deserves. I mean, I think people need to understand if you drive around a barricade, you're going to pay a $250 fine. If your car is disabled in that hazard, your license is going to be suspended. I mean, we want to emphasize to folks how serious this is. This endangers lives. And frankly, it's just, it's really just pure recklessness. I mean, these people don't need to drive around that barricade. So it's just a matter of thinking a little bit before you put your foot on the gas pedal and go around that barricade into the moving waters.
And where does this legislation stand?
I just proposed it. It's been assigned to the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee, and I look forward to moving it through the legislature soon.
And you said you've actually gotten a strong response from emergency responders.
Yeah, the first responder community has responded tremendously. I've received calls and emails from faraway places expressing the difficulties they had. One call I got explained how first responders went in to rescue a driver and they got stranded and needed to be rescued by the National Guard. So it really is illustrative of the problem that's out there, and hopefully we'll get it fixed.
An additional piece of legislation actually that is now law, this is Act 111. This is related to Megan's Law. This is talking about homeless and out-of-state offenders. There are other components of this as well. Talk to us a little bit about Act 111.
Well, in a nutshell, this brought Pennsylvania into compliance with the Adam Walsh Act, which is a federal piece of legislation requiring really the Megan's laws across the country to be consistent with one another. We had two loopholes, though, here in Pennsylvania's Megan's Law as it related to homeless offenders and out-of-state offenders. This bill closed those loopholes. This bill also included my suggestion to make it a felony for school employees, coaches, teachers to engage in sexual conduct with their students. That idea was initially proposed by my colleagues in the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. It's great they got to come up to the Capitol and be on hand as Governor Corbett signed this bill into law.
Now, this was actually, as you mentioned, a way to get Pennsylvania in compliance with the federal government, but this was also to get Pennsylvania the assurance that they would get federal funding as well.
Yeah, we had received money from the feds on some important initiatives as it relates to crime, and we were at risk of losing that money. As a matter of fact, we had to request a couple of extensions to continue receiving that money while we were working on the legislation. But fortunately, the funding stream continued, and it will continue based upon this act.
And we just have a short time left, but talk to us a little bit about what this now does relating to better communication with other states as well.
Yeah, sure. As long as there's consistency amongst the states, it's easier for law enforcers to enforce the provisions of Megan's Law. As a former assistant DA running the sex crimes unit, a lot of times I was faced with the difficulty of trying to figure out, well, what do they require in Iowa? Well, now we'll know.
All right, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Pennsylvania State Representative Todd Stevens. I'm Jill Horner.